Burbank, California, November 1967. The mahogany conference room at Columbia Pictures smelled of cigarettes and ambition. 14 men in dark suits sat around a polished table that reflected the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. At the head of the table, 28-year-old executive producer Marcus Rothstein shuffled through papers with the confidence of someone who believed the future belonged to him. At the far end, Andy Williams sat quietly, hands folded, wearing the kind of gentle expression that had made him America's favorite Christmas voice. Marcus had arrived at Columbia Pictures 3 years earlier, fresh from Harvard Business School, with an MBA and a burning conviction that Hollywood was run by dinosaurs who didn't understand the changing cultural landscape. He'd studied the demographics. He'd analyzed the box office trends. He knew exactly where American entertainment was heading, and it wasn't toward Andy Williams. The meeting was supposed to be a formality. Andy's television specials had dominated ratings for 3 consecutive seasons. His NBC Christmas show was the most-watched variety program of 1966, drawing over 40 million viewers. The Columbia Pictures deal was meant to transition him into feature films, a natural evolution for someone of his stature and popularity. The contract sitting before them represented a 3-picture deal worth over $2 million. But Marcus Rothstein had other ideas about where American entertainment was heading. Andy Williams, at 39, was at the peak of his career. His recording of Moon River had become his signature song, earning him a Grammy nomination and establishing him as one of America's premier interpreters of popular music. His variety show on NBC had been renewed for a 4th season. Beyond the statistics, Andy represented something deeper to American audiences: stability, warmth, and elegance in an era when the country felt increasingly divided. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the particular arrogance of youth, convinced it understands the world better than experience. "We're at a crossroads in this business. The old guard is dying. The audience is changing. They want edge. They want danger. They want relevance." He gestured toward a stack of demographics reports. "Our research shows that viewers under 30 are abandoning traditional variety shows. They're listening to rock music. They're going to see movies with real social commentary. They want authenticity, not—" He paused, looking directly at Andy Williams. "Not pleasant background music." The room shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew this was meant for Andy, but no one expected Marcus to be quite so blunt about it. Andy's expression didn't change. He simply listened, as he always did. "Which brings me to the Williams Project," Marcus continued, his voice gaining momentum. "I've reviewed the proposed film concepts: musical comedies, family entertainment, safe, predictable content that might have worked 5 years ago, but feels completely out of touch today." Frank Morrison, Columbia's head of development and Marcus's superior, cleared his throat. "Marcus, perhaps we should discuss this privately before—" "No," Marcus interrupted, his eyes still fixed on Andy. "I think it's important that everyone understands the direction we're taking. Mr. Williams, with all due respect to your past success, you represent everything this industry needs to move away from. You're yesterday's news wrapped in a sweater vest." The silence that followed was excruciating. 14 powerful men in Hollywood sat frozen, watching as a young executive systematically destroyed the reputation of one of America's most beloved entertainers. Andy Williams looked at Marcus Rothstein with those same calm eyes that had charmed audiences for years. His hands remained folded. His posture didn't change. For 10 seconds that felt like hours. He simply studied the young man who had just called his entire career irrelevant. Then Andy did something that surprised everyone in the room. He smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a wounded smile, a genuine, almost paternal smile, the kind a father might give a son who had just said something foolish but forgivable. "Mr. Rothstein," Andy said quietly, his voice carrying no trace of anger or hurt, "I appreciate your honesty, and I hope this industry gives you everything you think you deserve." He stood up slowly, gathered his papers, and walked toward the door. As he reached for the handle, he turned back to face the room. "Good luck with the revolution, gentlemen." Then Andy Williams left the conference room at Columbia Pictures for the last time, leaving behind a deal worth $2 million in a room full of men who suddenly felt smaller than they had when the meeting began. Marcus Rothstein sat in his chair, heart pounding, waiting for vindication from his colleagues. Instead, he found Frank Morrison staring at him with barely controlled fury. "What the hell did you just do?" Frank asked. "I made a business decision," Marcus replied, though his voice carried less conviction than it had moments earlier. "We can't keep making movies for an audience that doesn't exist anymore." "You just humiliated one of the most respected men in this business," said Jerry Cohen, Columbia's head of television partnerships. "Andy Williams has more class in his little finger than most people have in their entire body." But Marcus was committed to his position. Class doesn't sell tickets. Relevance sells tickets. You'll see. In 2 years, nobody will remember Andy Williams. The meeting disbanded in uncomfortable silence. Frank Morrison stayed behind as the others filed out. "Marcus, you better hope you're right about this," Frank said quietly. "Because if you're wrong, you just made an enemy of everyone in this room who watched you destroy a good man for no reason." Marcus gathered his papers with shaking hands. "I'm not wrong," he said. "I'm never wrong about these things." But that night, alone in his Malibu apartment, Marcus Rothstein couldn't shake the image of Andy Williams' face. The calm acceptance, the gentle smile, the complete absence of bitterness or retaliation. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. The next morning, Variety ran a brief item about Andy Williams departing the Columbia Pictures project. The article was respectful, mentioning creative differences without assigning blame. Andy had said nothing to the press about what actually happened in that conference room. Marcus had expected to feel vindicated. Instead, he felt strangely empty. Over the following months, Marcus Rothstein's career trajectory seemed to validate his decision. He greenlit 3 films aimed at younger audiences. 2 became modest hits. Hollywood trade publications profiled him as a visionary who understood the changing entertainment landscape. Meanwhile, Andy Williams continued hosting his television specials, recording albums, and performing to sold-out crowds. His Christmas special in 1967 drew the highest ratings of any variety show that season. But Marcus told himself this was just the last gasp of a dying era. By 1970, Marcus had been promoted to senior vice president at Columbia Pictures. He was 31 years old, making more money than his father had ever dreamed of, and convinced he had correctly predicted the future of American entertainment. Then the market shifted. The counterculture movement that Marcus had bet everything on began to fragment. Audiences grew tired of angry, confrontational content. They started gravitating toward entertainment that felt warm, familiar, comforting. Family programming experienced a resurgence. Variety shows returned to television. Musical films found new life. Marcus's first major failure came in 1972 with a gritty urban drama he championed. The film opened to devastating reviews and earned back less than 30% of its budget. His second failure was more catastrophic. In 1973, he greenlit an ambitious rock musical about Vietnam War protesters that cost the studio $4 million and played in theaters for exactly 3 weeks. Marcus watched his carefully constructed empire begin to crumble. The studio heads who had praised his vision began questioning his judgment. Projects he championed failed at the box office. Films he had rejected were produced by competitors and became massive successes. Meanwhile, Andy Williams's Christmas specials continued to break ratings records. His 1973 holiday special drew 45 million viewers. The man Marcus had dismissed as irrelevant was becoming more embedded in American culture than ever. By 1975, Marcus Rothstein was no longer the golden boy of Hollywood. He was a middle-aged executive desperately trying to salvage a reputation built on predicting trends that had proven temporary. By 1977, he was unemployed. The industry that had once celebrated his boldness now whispered about his arrogance. The executives who had followed his lead during the glory years distanced themselves as his influence waned. Marcus found himself blacklisted from major studios, reduced to pitching low-budget projects to independent producers who barely returned his calls. In the winter of 1978, 11 years after that November afternoon in Burbank, Marcus Rothstein sat in a coffee shop on Sunset Boulevard, staring at a newspaper entertainment section filled with headlines about Andy Williams' latest television special, his sold-out concert tour, and his upcoming star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Andy Williams, the man Marcus had dismissed as yesterday's news, was more popular than ever. That afternoon, Marcus did something he had sworn he would never do. He called Andy Williams' management company. The receptionist was polite but firm. Mr. Williams is in rehearsals for his holiday special. He's not taking unsolicited calls. Tell him it's Marcus Rothstein from Columbia Pictures, Marcus said, immediately regretting how desperate he sounded. 20 minutes later, his phone rang. Marcus? The voice was exactly the same as he remembered. Calm, warm, genuinely curious. This is Andy. How can I help you? No mention of their last meeting, no reference to what had happened in that conference room, just a simple offer of assistance. Marcus's carefully rehearsed pitch dissolved in his throat. Andy, I wanted to apologize for what happened back in '67. The way I treated you was inexcusable. Marcus, that was a long time ago. We all say things we don't mean when we're under pressure. I did mean it, Marcus said, the words coming out in a rush. That's what makes it worse. I thought I knew everything. I thought you were finished. I was wrong about everything. There was a pause. Marcus could hear music in the background, the sound of a rehearsal continuing without Andy. What can I do for you, Marcus? Andy asked. The kindness in his voice made Marcus want to cry. I need a job, Marcus said simply. I know it's presumptuous to ask, but my career is over. Nobody in this town will hire me. I've got a wife, 2 kids. I don't know where else to turn. Another pause, longer this time. Are you free Tuesday morning? Andy asked. I'm producing a variety special for ABC. We could use someone with your development experience to help with the non-musical segments. Marcus stared at the phone. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to work together. The pay isn't executive level, but it's honest work, and it might help you get back on your feet. Why? Marcus asked. After what I did to you? Andy was quiet for a moment. Because 11 years ago, you were a young man trying to make his mark in a tough business. You made a mistake. That doesn't define who you are unless you let it. Marcus started crying right there in the coffee shop on Sunset Boulevard. Thank you, he whispered. Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, stage 12 at ABC. Don't be late. Marcus Rothstein worked on Andy Williams' production team for 6 months. He was professional, grateful, and quietly brilliant at his job. Andy never mentioned their history. Neither did anyone else on the crew, though Marcus suspected Andy had asked them not to. The work was humbling. Marcus, who had once commanded meetings with dozens of executives, now coordinated with lighting technicians and managed guest star requirements. It was honest work, but it required him to check his ego at the door every morning. Andy watched Marcus carefully during those months, not with suspicion, but with the quiet attention of someone evaluating character. He noticed how Marcus treated the junior staff members with respect. He saw how the former executive listened instead of commanding, learned instead of lecturing. When the special wrapped, Andy recommended Marcus for a development position at a smaller studio. Within 2 years, Marcus was back on his feet. Within 5, he was running his own production company. He never forgot who gave him that second chance. In 1985, Marcus Rothstein was interviewed for a magazine article about second acts in Hollywood. The journalist asked him about the lowest point in his career. I once fired Andy Williams, Marcus said. Not literally fired, but I humiliated him in a room full of people because I thought I knew better than everyone else. He had every right to destroy me when I asked for help years later. Instead, he gave me a job. The journalist pressed for details, but Marcus wouldn't elaborate. Some stories aren't about the person who tells them, he said. They're about the person who lives them. Andy Williams is the most graceful man I've ever known. That's all you need to know. When Andy Williams died in 2012, Marcus Rothstein was one of the speakers at his memorial service. He told the story publicly for the first time. Andy Williams saved my career, he said to the packed auditorium. But more than that, he saved my soul. He showed me what real strength looks like. It doesn't look like winning or being right. It looks like forgiveness. It looks like giving someone a chance to be better than they were. Marcus paused, looking out at the faces of everyone Andy had touched. The last thing Andy said to me 45 years ago was, I hope this industry gives you everything you think you deserve. I thought it was a curse. It turned out to be a blessing, because what I deserved was the chance to learn from the best man I ever knew. The lesson of that November afternoon in 1967 wasn't about the dangers of arrogance or the folly of dismissing experience. It was about something deeper. It was about the choice we all face when someone hurts us. We can choose to hurt them back, or we can choose to help them become better. Andy Williams chose grace, and in doing so, he didn't just save Marcus Rothstein's career, he saved his humanity.